Sure, here's the story you requested, with American names and locations, and a more intriguing plot. The unveiling of Eliza Thorne, a 28-year-old nurse from Chicago, Illinois, had always believed in the transformative power of love. What she never anticipated was that her own love story would unravel with such venom. Eliza was a woman of striking beauty. Her dark skin glowed with a quiet confidence, and her smile held the power to soothe any troubled soul. She had a calming presence that made people feel safe, even when her own world felt anything but. Her path crossed with Ethan Harrington during a medical mission in New Orleans, Louisiana. Ethan, 31, was everything she initially thought she wanted: tall, with sun-kissed blonde hair and eyes the color of the deep sea. Their connection was instant, a whirlwind romance filled with laughter, shared dreams, and an intoxicating curiosity about each other's lives. After a few months, they were inseparable, and Eliza genuinely believed he was different, a true partner. Then, his family entered the picture. For 2 years, Eliza poured her heart and soul into trying to bridge the chasm between herself and the Harrington family. But from day one, it was clear they despised her, not for who she was, but for the color of her skin. Eleanor Harrington, Ethan's mother, was a woman carved from ice, perpetually adorned in a formidable string of pearls that seemed to clink with every condescending word. "You don't belong here," Eleanor once declared, her gaze piercing after a tense family dinner in their exclusive Hamptons estate. "Our family's legacy predates this nation. You're a fleeting distraction, nothing more." Ethan's sisters, Scarlett and Vivian, both high-powered fashion executives in New York City, were no less cruel. Their designer attire and polished veneers hid a venomous wit. "You're remarkably well-spoken for someone like you," Scarlett once purred, a deceptive sweetness in her tone. Vivian, with a smirk that never quite reached her eyes, added, "Your hair is so ethnic." These were constant, small jabs disguised as compliments that landed like brutal blows. And their father, Richard Harrington, a former military general, presided over it all with an icy, silent judgment. He never called Eliza by her name, always referring to her as her or that girl. Through it all, Ethan remained silent. He would only stare at his plate or fidget with his tie, paralyzed by his father's unspoken authority. Eliza swallowed countless insults, each one chipping away at her spirit, but her love for the man she met in New Orleans, the kind and attentive Ethan, kept her tethered. The wedding was set to take place at the historic Grandview Manor in upstate New York, a majestic hall with sweeping staircases and antique chandeliers. Eliza had chosen her dress with care, an ivory silk gown, simple yet elegant, adorned with a delicate lace veil that had been her grandmother's. Her parents, David and Simone Thorne, had flown in from Chicago that morning, radiating pride and joy. David in a crisp black suit, and Simone in a flowing lavender gown with a matching fascinator, beamed at their daughter. The ceremony began beautifully. As Eliza walked down the aisle, her gaze locked with Ethan's. She didn't notice the glint of silver in Eleanor's clutch, seated in the front pew. The officiant began the vows. Ethan's voice was shaky, not from emotion, but from a visible fear. Eleanor's eyes, fixed on him, seemed to silently scream, "Don't mess this up." Eliza took a steadying breath and began her vows. "I vow to stand beside you." Then chaos erupted. Eleanor rose, a chilling silence descending upon the guests. She walked purposefully to the altar, a predatory glint in her eyes. Without a word, she seized the back of Eliza's gown. With a swift, deliberate snip, the silk shrieked as it was sliced. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Another cut, and the fabric tore violently, jagged and defiled. "You are not part of this family." Eleanor spat, her voice ringing with contempt. "This mockery ends here." Eliza froze, a wave of cold air washing over her exposed back. Whispers filled the hall. All eyes were on her, not in admiration, but in stark humiliation. David Thorne lunged from his seat. "Hey, get your hands off my daughter." Richard Harrington, unblinking, also stood. You should have stayed in your own circles. Scarlett sneered. She looks like she's playing dress-up anyway. Vivian muttered loudly. Didn't expect it to tear so easily. Must be cheap. Simone Thorne rose, her hands trembling. You people are monsters. All of you. Eliza turned to Ethan, her voice a fragile whisper. Are you going to let this happen? He looked at her, then at his mother, then back down at his feet. Silent. Frozen. Weak. That silence cut deeper than any scissors. Tears welled, but Eliza refused to let them fall. Amina, Eliza's best friend and maid of honor, rushed to the altar, a white shawl clutched in her hands. She gently wrapped it around Eliza's shoulders, covering her exposed skin with a quiet strength. You are not walking out of here humiliated, Amina whispered, her eyes burning with fierce resolve. You're walking out of here on fire. Eliza took a step forward, her voice rising, clear and strong, above the stunned silence. To everyone here, she began, this was supposed to be a wedding, a celebration. Instead, it has become a brutal mirror of everything I have silently endured for 2 years. Her hand trembled slightly as she pointed to Eleanor. This woman just used scissors, yes, actual scissors, to tear my wedding dress while I stood here trying to say my vows. That is hatred. That is racism. That is evil, plain and simple. She turned to Scarlett and Vivian. You two have built careers on fake smiles and underhanded insults. And to Richard, you couldn't even say my name, just her, as if I'm less than human. Finally, her gaze locked with Ethan's. And you, the man I thought would protect me, honor me, stand beside me, you watched it happen. You said nothing. Gasps echoed through the room. You stood in silence. And silence makes you complicit. Her hands slowly rose to her head. She removed the lace veil, her movements now steady, resolute. She flung the veil down, hard, at Ethan's feet. Then, she slipped the engagement ring from her left hand and let it fall to the center of the aisle, a sharp ting echoing on the tile. You'll never get a woman like me again, she declared. She turned, meeting her parents' gazes, and stretched out her hands. Let's go. David and Simone walked forward, their heads held high, and took her hands. They didn't utter another word. Their proud presence spoke volumes. Amina and Marcus, her closest friends, followed closely behind, right by Eliza's side. Other guests, especially those from Eliza's side, stood in solidarity. Even a few from Ethan's side followed, shaking their heads in shame at the appalling spectacle they had witnessed. Together, they walked out of the hall, heads held high, dignity untouched. Outside, the sun was blinding. Reporters and photographers, invited for what was meant to be a high-society Harrington wedding, swarmed the entrance. Cameras clicked like rapid gunfire. Eliza stood at the top of the steps, half her dress ripped, the shawl wrapped around her shoulders, her crown braids still perfectly in place. But it wasn't pity they captured. It was an undeniable power. A reporter called out, "Eliza, what happened?" She looked directly into one of the cameras, her voice calm, her eyes burning with a fierce resolve. "You want the real story?" she said. "A black woman came for love and left with her self-respect." That clip went viral before she even arrived home. Hashtag she walked away trended across the U.S. and beyond. The video of Eleanor tearing Eliza's dress garnered over 10 million views. People from all walks of life, black, white, young, old, spoke out, angry, inspired, sharing their own stories. Some hailed her as brave, others condemned Ethan as weak. Many echoed the sentiment. This is what happens when racism is allowed to breathe in silence. The fallout was swift and brutal. Scarlett and Vivian lost major fashion contracts as brands pulled out. Eleanor was removed from 2 prominent charity boards within a week. Richard resigned from a prestigious golf committee after intense public pressure. And Ethan? He tried everything. Texts, emails, voicemails. "I'm sorry," he wrote. "I didn't know what to do. I was scared." Eliza replied only once. "You didn't know what to do. You just chose not to." A year later, Eliza was thriving. She opened a wellness center in Chicago, dedicated to helping women of color navigate emotional trauma and build self-worth. She spoke at conferences, started a podcast called Walk Anyway, focused on boundaries, healing, and self-respect. Her book, Torn But Still Standing, became a national bestseller. And love? It came not loud or flashy, but real. She met David, a history teacher who volunteered with youth in his community. No games, no fear, no silent dinners or hateful stares. Just a man who stood beside her, not behind her, not afraid, just beside her. Eliza never regretted walking out of that wedding. In fact, it was the best decision of her life. Because sometimes the loudest "I do" is the one you say to yourself when you choose dignity over damage and peace over pretense. And when you do, you don't just walk away, you rise.